What is going on, you wonderful thought-having people, you? As always, I'm Jake from Give It Thought, and let's just get right into this. Oh, some people are going to be mad. So No Man's Sky is no longer under investigation in the UK by the Advertising Standards Authority, better known as the ASA. And the results of that investigation ruled that the assessment for misleading advertising, substantiation, and exaggeration were, surprise surprise, not upheld. This comes off a near 2-month-long investigation into the game and coincidentally concludes a few days after the Foundation update released. I'm seeing a pattern here, but that's a whole other video. I wanted to make a quick note here. I'm using the trailers in the background today to remind everyone what the ads looked like. But moving on, I know exactly the thought in everyone's head right now. How did they get away with it? Well, that's what I'm here for. The problem with this whole investigation, and this is something I mentioned when it was first announced Hello Games was under investigation, is that this is all centered around the Steam store. I talked about Steam in last Friday's video and how No Man's Sky likely influenced their decision to not allow any more concept art on their store pages, and I think this investigation was responsible for that because Steam was also labeled in the investigation, as you can see here. Funny thing is, what the ASA was looking for, which were misleading advertisements on Steam, were taken down by Steam themselves before the investigation was even over. But back to that actual investigation. The whole thing was based around 6 major complaints from people who bought the game, which were overall game experience, the user interface, environmental generation, graphic quality, loading screens, and factions. And trust me, I'm saving factions for last because, well, you'll see. So let's break down the ASA's ruling on the first 5 factors really quick so we can get to the real problem with this investigation, which was, again, their ruling on the factions. Starting out with the overall experience, the ASA said the summary description of the game made clear that it was procedurally generated. The game universe was essentially infinite, and that the core premise was exploration. As such, we considered consumers would understand the images and videos to be representative of the type of content they would encounter during gameplay, but would not expect to see those specific features, landscapes, battles, and structures. While this doesn't bother me too much, I will pose these questions. Large-scale space battles? Those are in the game? Let's get on to the next one, which is the UI. The ASA's response to that was, we did not consider that these elements would affect a consumer's decision to purchase the game, as they were superficial and incidental components in relation to the core gameplay mechanics and features. This one I agree with. Sure, it looked a little bit different in the trailers, but like the ASA said, all that stuff is really just fluff compared to the big discrepancies. Next up is environmental generation. The ASA ruled this was not misleading because Hello Games provided footage of buildings and structures that were a similar type to those pictured on the Steam store page. And that footage showed the bodies of water consistent with the ads, large-scale space battles were found to be unusual but still in the game, and sentinel behavior was deemed to be consistent with the ads and the game. So of those 3, you know which one I'm going to pick out, right? Sure, you can have pretty large space battles, but nothing like in the trailers. I'm guessing the ASA thinks that is close enough. They did find one discrepancy in the ads though, and that is the footage provided did not show a ship flying underneath a rock formation as in one of the videos, and we had been unable to replicate similar behavior in the game. But like the UI, this stuff is just fluff really, and I wouldn't even rule against them on that. Moving on to graphical quality, it was found that the game was capable of producing graphics of much higher quality than that shown in the ads, and of comparable quality with the screenshots, and considered that the images used therefore did not exaggerate the game's performance in this regard. Here, I'm not sold on this. During the presentations where Sean Murray played the game with a PS4 controller in hand, the graphics portrayed there were significantly better than you can get in the game. But again, this is a Steam store investigation. But what the ASA is saying here, with a high-end PC you can achieve the graphics in the trailers, or even better ones with the right equipment. And really quick, the loading screen fiasco was also ruled not to be misleading somehow. The ASA stated the warp screens did not represent an interruption to the gameplay experience as it was contiguous and consistent with the preceding and following gameplay sequences. But that was not the problem, it was the time taken in those sequences. The ASA did not address that in their ruling for some reason. They talked about it up above and said Hello Games had sent them footage where warping only took 5 seconds, but that had to be on a high-end PC. But finally, let's get to the factions. This is where I find the whole investigation to be rendered into nothing. The whole investigation became meaningless to me when I read this part. You know what, I'm just going to read you the whole faction response from Hello Games so you get the complete idea of what happened. Here goes. In relation to the claims factions vie for territory, Hello Games said that this was part of the story or narrative of the game and manifested itself through the player's journey and interactions with the three factions during gameplay. They referred to a third-party video describing the characteristics of the three factions. Hello Games explained that solar systems were occupied by a single faction. When players interacted with a factioned non-player character, they would sometimes mention their dislike of other factions. There would also be fights between factions which the player could take part in, and doing so could increase the player's reputation with the faction they sided with. Hello Games said they chose the word vying purposefully because it suggested there was an ongoing struggle. Am I the only one seeing what is wrong with this? There's no fighting between factions. Unless you call passive-aggressive gossip fighting, then I guess. But even then, you can't take part in that. And to make matters worse, the ASA ruled that this was not misleading on the grounds, quote, "We understood that players could interact with three different factions, who occupied specific areas and could take part in battles between opposing factions." Do I need to say it again? There's no faction battles. Look, I love the game in itself. Heck, I talk about it more than anything else on this channel, but I do see that it misled customers. I could put together a report myself in a couple hours that shows that. But like I've mentioned, this was an investigation of the Steam page, and because of that we do not see the results that most people would agree should have happened. I'm basically fine with all the rulings except the one about factions. I don't know what Hello Games showed them to make them believe that was in the game, but it's not there. It's simply not there. And this channel is based around only my opinions, so that makes it inherently flawed. So that's why I count on you guys to make up for that in the comments. Be sure to tell me your thoughts on this ruling, and especially what you think about that faction ruling. But I think that's where I'm going to have to end this video. If you enjoyed this video, you know what you have to do. Hit that like button for me, and if you're new here, why not subscribe? I put out a new video every single day, and if you want to be caught up on all those, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button. And while you're here, why not check out my video about the latest No Man's Sky update patch notes. I tried to go into a little bit more detail with that one, so if you're interested in that, go check that one out. But I think that's where I'm going to end things today. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, give thought to everything.